Florida's middle class is quietly disappearing, not into other cities or states, but into parking lots and side streets, with rent increases outpacing wages and insurance costs skyrocketing. Many working families have traded leases for minivans and sedans, not out of choice but necessity. What was once seen as a fringe lifestyle is rapidly becoming a mainstream fallback, especially in states like California and New York, where even two full-time incomes can't guarantee stable housing. For a growing number of Americans, the vehicle has become a last refuge.
Don't get fooled by the label. Subscribe now to uncover what's really behind your favorite brands, and get the truth Big Food doesn't want you to see.
An unregulated, self-contained shelter against a system that no longer holds. This isn't just a shift in how people live. It's a collapse in what middle-class stability even means. The rise of van living among working individuals and families is a stark response to systemic failure, unaffordable housing, stagnant wages, and a lack of public support. It's a symptom of a broader unraveling, where cars become homes, cities become exclusion zones, and policies lag behind reality. This documentary examines the rise of vehicle residency in America, uncovering how economic pressure, policy neglect, and culture denial are quietly reshaping the way millions survive. Across the United States, the middle class is undergoing a quiet transformation, one that doesn't involve new homes, picket fences, or suburban security. It involves vans, RVs, SUVs, and sedans. A growing number of middle-class Americans are living in their vehicles. And it's not a lifestyle trend. It's an economic survival strategy. This isn't about minimalist living or social media influencers documenting their scenic travels. This is about families, veterans, teachers, and gig workers being priced out of traditional housing. They're not downsizing by choice. They're downsizing because rent has become impossible. Mortgage rates are through the roof. Landlords keep raising prices. Wages are stuck. And the only thing left with four walls and a lock they can afford is parked at a Walmart overnight. In places like California, Florida, and New York, rent prices have surged more than 40% in just 5 years. Meanwhile, income has barely moved. The math is simple. The reality is brutal. Workers are clocking in every day, sometimes holding multiple jobs, and still can't afford a 2-bedroom apartment. In some areas, a person would need to work 18 to 20 hours a day just to make rent. And that's before factoring in groceries, gas, or medical bills. The system is broken, and van life is the proof. The American dream was once rooted in stability. Own a home, build equity, raise a family in one place. But for more and more people, that dream has morphed into a different kind of calculation. Stay in the city and work, but live in a van. Trade square footage for a parking spot. Give up a physical address to avoid being buried in rent, utilities, and late fees. It's not just the homeless or the unemployed. Nearly 40% of Americans living in vehicles today are employed, some of them full-time. They're your delivery drivers, your baristas, your warehouse workers. They're teachers who can't afford to live in the school districts they serve. They're health aides who sleep in hospital parking lots because rent in the city is too expensive. This is what poverty looks like in 2025. It's not a cardboard sign or a tent on the sidewalk. It's a well-kept minivan with blackout curtains, solar panels, and a gym membership for showers. It's a full-time worker sleeping in a Target parking lot because their paycheck won't stretch far enough to pay for both food and rent. The car has become the last line of defense. It's shelter. It's storage. It's security. And for many, it's the only place left where they still feel in control. Living in a vehicle offers mobility, privacy, and freedom, but also comes with danger, isolation, and constant stress. There's a name for this emerging group, the vehicle resident class, and it's growing. Data shows a more than 60% increase in Americans living in vehicles over the last 5 years. This is no longer a fringe response. It's a mainstream one. Projections now estimate that by 2035, vehicle residency could become the third largest form of housing in the country, behind homeownership and renting. That's not a trend. That's a national reckoning. People aren't just living in vans because they want to be off-grid. They're doing it because affordable housing has been decimated by rising land taxes, investor speculation, and years of government neglect. They're doing it because wages haven't kept up with inflation. They're doing it because cities have become unaffordable for the very people who keep them running. The market isn't solving this. And government support? Almost non-existent. Local policies are patchwork at best and hostile at worst. Many cities ban overnight parking. Others ticket or tow vehicles being used as shelter. Some force residents into safe parking lots that fill up fast or cost more than they can afford. Zoning laws haven't adapted, and the stigma is growing. The result is a class of people caught between invisibility and criminalization. They're neither fully housed nor fully homeless. They're everywhere and nowhere, and society hasn't figured out what to do with them. Some charities offer help, but their resources are stretched thin. Community groups try to offer support, but can't keep pace with demand. Meanwhile, the federal government continues to funnel housing programs through a system that's outdated, underfunded, and unprepared for the scale of this shift. This is the contradiction of modern America. A nation that can send billionaires into space can't provide overnight parking for a family in a van. A country that prides itself on freedom can't protect the dignity of the people forced into mobility by economic desperation. And yet, within this crisis, a new reality is emerging. Van living is becoming normalized. Commercial van makeover shows are taking off. Tech companies are offering employees parking space rentals. Entire industries are springing up around outfitting vans with beds, kitchens, and mobile Wi-Fi. Even retail parking lots are quietly adapting, offering long-term parking permits to vehicle residents who blend in with the scenery. It's the commodification of desperation. The housing crisis turned into a business model, and it's happening without any meaningful intervention to address the root cause. This shift is forcing the country to ask hard questions. What does success look like now? Is stability measured in square feet or in self-sufficiency? If housing is no longer affordable, is mobility the only path forward? And most importantly, how do we let it get to this point? Debt plays a massive role. Americans have been taught to borrow to keep up, to fund college, to buy homes, to maintain the illusion of upward mobility. And now, many are drowning in debt, unable to escape it, unable to buy into a system that demands more than it gives. The promise of prosperity through hard work has collapsed under the weight of stagnant wages and runaway costs. This is not sustainable. And yet, it's being sustained. Not by policy, but by people adapting, adjusting, surviving. They're finding community where they can, online or in shared parking lots. They're building networks of support where government has failed them. They're redefining what it means to live in America when the system no longer provides a place to call home. But none of this should be necessary. Housing is not a luxury. Stability is not an option. They are foundations. And when millions of people no longer have access to them, the consequences reach far beyond just economics. They shape culture. They reshape politics. They redefine who we are. This country is facing a housing emergency. The van living explosion is just the most visible symptom. And if leaders continue to ignore it, if we keep pretending this is a choice instead of last resort, then the middle class, as we knew it, will vanish. If you've watched this and you're outraged, good. You should be. If you're seeing this happen in your city, talk about it in the comments. If you know someone living in their car, don't look away. Share this video so more people understand just how deep this crisis goes. And hit the like button if you think housing should be a right, not a privilege. Subscribe for more breakdowns like this, because we'll keep exposing what's really happening behind the headlines. The vans are out there, parked quietly, tucked away, full of people who once believed in the dream, until the dream priced them out. Let's stop pretending that's acceptable. Let's start demanding better. You want to know what rock bottom looks like in 2025? It's not a tent city. It's not a foreclosure sign. It's a fully employed American sleeping in the back of a Dodge Caravan outside a strip mall, quietly, discreetly, because they have nowhere else to go. This is what middle-class poverty looks like now. Clean vans, fold-out beds, solar panels rigged to dashboards. It's people doing everything right, working, saving, staying out of trouble, still ending up priced out, pushed out, and living in vehicles. The system didn't collapse overnight. It eroded piece by piece. And this van living surge, is the final consequence of decades of political failure and economic delusion. Affordable housing didn't disappear by accident. It was gutted. Politicians cut funding, sold off public land, deregulated rental markets, and let real estate become Wall Street's playground. Meanwhile, average people watched rent skyrocket while their wages stayed frozen. And when the math stopped working, when even two incomes couldn't secure a one-bedroom, the fallback was simple: a vehicle. Not because it's glamorous, not because it's Instagrammable, but because it's the last option before the street. This is a systemic failure. This is what happens when the cost of survival outpaces the value of work. When employment no longer guarantees a roof over your head, the term middle class starts to lose all meaning. What we're witnessing is the middle class becoming the mobile class, not by aspiration, but by necessity. And the numbers back it up. There's been a 60% increase in Americans living in vehicles in just 5 years. It's not just retirees in RVs. It's not college kids on road trips. It's families with kids. It's veterans. It's essential workers. And if projections hold, van residency will become the third most common housing model in America by 2035, behind owning and renting. Let that sink in. Van life is no longer a fringe phenomenon. It's becoming a structural adaptation to an unaffordable country. And the cruelest irony? It's being sold back to us as a lifestyle brand. Companies are cashing in. Conversion kits, luxury van remodels, influencer sponsorships. It's capitalism wrapping crisis in a shiny package. Because if they can convince you it's a choice, they don't have to fix the problem. But don't get it twisted. This is not a lifestyle. This is housing insecurity with tinted windows. This is America turning cars into homes because homes are no longer accessible. And instead of building affordable housing or raising wages, officials are passing ordinances that make vehicle living harder. No overnight parking, fines for urban camping, towing laws that leave people stranded. In city after city, the same pattern. Criminalize poverty, ignore the cause, push the problem somewhere else. This is the moral failure of our time. We can send satellites to Mars, but we can't provide safe parking lots. We can build billion-dollar stadiums, but not shelters. We can subsidize banks, bail out airlines, but when it comes to the people who actually keep this country running, they're left in parking lots, clutching their dignity in the dark. And still, they keep going. That's what's most devastating. People aren't giving up. They're adapting. They're surviving. They're figuring out how to cook on camp stoves, wash up at gyms, find Wi-Fi in coffee shop parking lots, and keep working through it all. It's not resilience born of pride. It's survival born of necessity. But it shouldn't have to be this way. The government response? Fragmented. Some cities try safe parking programs, usually underfunded and full. Others do nothing. Or worse, actively target vehicle dwellers for removal. Federal policy? Non-existent. The housing crisis is treated like a local inconvenience, not the national emergency it is. And don't count on the private sector. They help create this. Investment firms buying up single-family homes, turning neighborhoods into rentals, driving up prices until even dual-income households can't compete. And banks? They'll give you a credit card before they'll give you a mortgage. Debt has replaced ownership. Credit is the new gatekeeper. Want a decent car to live in? Finance it. Want a gym membership for showers? Put on a card. Want to hold on to your job while living mobile? Keep paying for data plans, insurance, gas, all on borrowed money. Debt is how Americans maintain appearances in a system that no longer works for them. And that debt, it's becoming a new form of control. Because once you're in it, you can't stop. You keep working. You can't say no. You can't slow down. You can't afford to lose your job, even when your job can't afford you housing. The cycle tightens. And a van becomes not just shelter, but a prison on wheels, one breakdown away from total collapse. This isn't freedom. This is fragility. This is what the end of the safety net looks like. And it's spreading. Quietly. Relentlessly. Middle-class families who used to host backyard barbecues are now searching forums for safe rest stops. People with degrees and savings accounts are now Googling how to discreetly sleep in residential neighborhoods. Seniors are cashing out pensions to buy RVs because they can't afford assisted living or rent. The ground is shifting. And what's terrifying is how normal it's starting to feel. This should not be normal. It should not be normal for a nurse to sleep in her SUV after a 12-hour shift. It should not be normal for school teachers to live in vans behind the campuses where they teach. It should not be normal for retirees to spend their final years circling parking lots because Social Security barely covers food, let alone rent. And yet here we are. The lines between choice and necessity have been blurred so thoroughly that many people don't even realize they've crossed them. They just know they're still working, still trying, still moving, and still falling further behind. So what happens now? Do we keep pretending this is sustainable? Do we keep rewarding politicians who offer nothing but platitudes? Do we keep celebrating van life as innovation while ignoring the desperation driving it? Or do we finally call this what it is? A national failure, decades in the making, made worse by every ignored warning, every gutted housing program, every stagnant wage. The truth is this: unless there is systemic intervention, real, large-scale investment in affordable housing, livable wages, healthcare access, and mobility infrastructure, this will only get worse. Vehicle living will not just be an adaptation. It will become an expectation. And once that happens, the middle class, as we understood it, is gone. The problem is, too many people still think van life is a phase, something trending millennials are doing to disconnect or live more freely. That narrative is dangerous. It masks the deeper truth. Van life is no longer a cultural experiment. It's economic displacement wearing a smile because there's no room left for anger. There are people right now, today, who had homes, steady jobs, and decent credit scores. And then rent increased by $500. Groceries doubled. Childcare disappeared. A medical bill hit. And all of it happened before they could blink. Now they live in a van, not because they gave up, but because they held on as long as they could, and the system gave up on them. When housing becomes a luxury item, you don't get evicted. You get priced out. Quietly. Brutally. And no one notices until the U-Haul becomes permanent. Until the back seat turns into a bed. Until the neighborhood becomes a Walmart parking lot. And you start calculating where you can go without getting ticketed or harassed. That's the day the line between middle class and houseless vanishes. And in 2025, it's happening every single day. Let's be honest. The economy isn't broken for everyone. It's working exactly as designed for those at the top, for investment firms buying up entire blocks of homes, for developers building luxury condos instead of affordable housing, for landlords raising rent 30% in 1 year with zero consequences. This is not accidental. It's extraction. And those paying the price are the ones who once believed they were safe. So what's the government doing? Look around. Cities are banning overnight parking. Counties are criminalizing homelessness. And instead of investing in permanent affordable housing, officials are building safe sleeping sites that run out of space within hours. People are turned away, not because they're not eligible, but because there's no capacity. Federal policy? Virtually silent. There's no national strategy to address the mass shift to vehicle living. No coordinated plan. No serious funding for affordable housing expansion. Just speeches, scattered programs, and endless deflection to local governments that are already overwhelmed. And the community response? Predictable. Homeowners call the cops when they see a van parked on their street. HOAs pass ordinances. Local forums fill with angry threads about outsiders taking up space. It doesn't matter if the person inside the van works nearby. It doesn't matter if they grew up in that city. Once you're living in your car, you stop being seen as a neighbor and start being treated as a threat. This is the stigma. This is what reinforces the spiral. When van dwellers get ticketed, towed, or forced to move constantly, they can't hold down jobs, enroll their kids in school, or maintain basic routines. That instability multiplies. And what began as a strategy to avoid homelessness turns into the thing that makes homelessness inevitable. We're not just watching poverty. We're watching manufactured instability. This is what happens when policy punishes people for being poor. When mobility is forced, not chosen. When shelter is temporary and dignity is optional. Yet amid this bleak reality, there's something powerful happening. People are organizing. Online forums are becoming lifelines. Van life groups are sharing parking tips, safety plans, and job listings. Informal communities are forming, off-grid, often invisible, because when institutions fail, people step in for each other. But let's be very clear. This grassroots survival doesn't absolve the system. It exposes it. The fact that so many Americans are keeping themselves afloat through mutual aid, parking lot solidarity, and shared resources should not be celebrated. It should be a wake-up call. They are doing what the government refuses to, showing up for each other, creating stability where none exists. And still it's not enough. People shouldn't have to rely on strangers in Facebook groups to find a safe place to sleep. Parents shouldn't have to choose between a tank of gas and school supplies. Workers shouldn't have to pretend they're just passing through when they're living in the back seat. We've crossed a line. And if this becomes a norm, it will redefine American society for generations. Because when vehicle living becomes institutionalized, when it's projected to be the third largest form of housing, it changes everything. Urban planning shifts, infrastructure adapts, and the idea that every person deserves a permanent home quietly disappears. What happens when we stop expecting government to provide housing? When mobility becomes permanent? When the line between worker and nomad, resident and outsider disappears? You get a nation of transients, not travelers, displaced citizens, employees who commute between cities because rent is unmanageable, families raising kids in vehicles because no apartment will take them without a six-figure income, seniors living out of their cars because retirement is a myth. This is not the country we were promised, and it doesn't have to stay this way. There is still time to change course, but not if we keep ignoring what's right in front of us. Not if we continue criminalizing poverty. Not if we keep acting like van life is just a cute cultural phase. It's not. It's the sound of a collapsing middle class. It's the story of millions being priced out of their lives. And it's the most urgent economic shift of our time. If this resonates with you, if you've seen this happen in your city or your own life, then speak up, leave a comment, tell your story, like this video so the algorithm can't bury it. Share it with someone who still thinks van life is a trend and not a warning. And if you want more hard truths like this, subscribe, because this isn't over. This isn't going away. And we will keep going until someone in power finally listens, until policy catches up with reality, until van life becomes a stepping stone out of crisis, not the new definition of surviving in America.